Welcome to this episode of Ask the Professor. I'm your host, Ron Tulley, Dean for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences here at the University of Findlay. Ask the Professor is a series I started to help our students and greater community get to know our professors a bit better and our programs as well. In this 1-hour format, we'll learn about their vocational passions, what they love to teach, their ongoing research, service, scholarship, and/or creative projects. And hopefully when we're finished, we have a better understanding, not just of them, but their field, the typical workday, if there is such a thing, and of course, what motivates them to do what they do. So for today's episode, we feature Dr. Wes King. Wes is the current director of bands here at the University of Findlay. He oversees the Oiler Marching Band, the Oiler Pep Band, the Wind Ensemble, the Symphonic Band, and the Jazz Ensemble, and he has no time for rest. Wes has also recently been appointed the next director of the Findlay Civic Band. Before his time at Findlay, Wes was a graduate student at the University of Memphis, where he pursued his doctorate of musical arts. He also worked with the Mighty Sound of the South, the Wind Ensemble, and the Symphonic Band while at Memphis. Prior to his time at Memphis, Dr. King was director of bands and assistant professor of music at Siena Heights, to the north of us there in Adrian, Michigan, where he directed the Saints Marching Band, the SHU Pep Band, the SHU Concert Band, and the SHU Jazz Band. I see a pattern here. He also taught a variety of classes in the SHU music department, including conducting, music technology, music theory, music education, as well as clarinet lessons. During his time at Adrian, Wes also served as the director of the Adrian City Band, the second oldest continuously operating community band in the country. Before SHU, Dr. King was director of bands at Taylorville High School in Taylorville, Mississippi. Wes holds a Bachelor of Music Education from Mississippi State University, a Master's in Music and Instrumental Conducting from the University of Arkansas, and a Doctorate of Musical Arts in Wind Conducting from the University of Memphis. He is a member of the College Band Directors National Association and the National Association for Music Education. He also has honorary memberships in Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma. Aside from his duties at the University of Findlay, Wes is an active drill writer, arranger, clinician, and presenter. Wes currently resides in Findlay with his wife, Megan, and his 3 kids. So let's start off with the obvious thing. I got your wife's name right there, didn't I?
It was Maggie. Can we redo that one?
Maggie, oh my goodness. Yeah, she's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and edit that out.
Okay.
I thought it was Megan. Oh,
He's gonna be like, I knew it. I knew it.
Maybe we should leave it in there just for posterity there, so that mistake is on the record.
Yeah.
So I mean, the obvious question I think to ask is, when did you know that you wanted to do this? When you wanted to teach and when you wanted to be a college band director?
Well, I sort of grew up in a musical family, but not really. My father was not a musician and my mother was not a musician. But my dad's definition of good music was pretty much limited to like the Beach Boys, based on when he grew up. So, I know at one point he had a guitar and didn't stick with it, and that kind of followed suit because every time I've tried to learn the guitar, it's not gone well. And but my grandmother on my father's side played piano, and she immigrated from Germany with her family around the Great Depression. And on my mother's side, we have a number of Tejano musicians in the family. And so my Uncle Fred and his son ran a Tejano band up until when he passed away. And so a number of my uncles played, on my mother's side, played guitar and played Tejano music. And so I grew up with those sounds in my head every time we would visit Texas, and we would visit South Texas and Corpus Christi most of the summers of my youth. But really my love of music, because I didn't grow up in a musical household, it was where I could get it. And so, people kind of maybe roll their eyes a little bit, but I say that I fell in love with music, and I joined band back in 6th grade because of the music of John Williams and other cinematic movie music composers. But also, people roll their eyes, especially when I say this, but I fell in love with music a lot through video game music. And, my generation, my age cohort, we really grew up with the original Nintendo and Super Nintendo and all of those early consoles. Now, not the earliest, but when you look, and I've taught a course in the history of video game music for summer camps. But when you go back and look at the technology that was emerging in those consoles when I was a kid, it allowed for much more complicated music and sounds. And so games like Final Fantasy and The Legend of Zelda and even Super Mario had really unique standout soundtracks, and that really made me want to learn to play instruments and to learn how to read music. And so I like to always refer to video game music. I tell my colleagues not to dismiss it, and I think it's a good quote unquote gateway drug into classical music. And so for me, that was what precipitated my interest in joining band in sixth grade in Tennessee. And I had great band directors. I had great teachers all throughout my training. And so I had two great teachers in the middle school band. And then I had two great teachers, especially the head director in my high school training. And it was in high school through the obvious efforts that our band directors, and particularly our head director, Mr. Phil Hughes, who's still a mentor of mine to this day, through the obvious passion and efforts that he put in giving us a top-notch music education at the high school level, and the kind of really high quality music that we played, especially for a high school band, it really made me want to do it. It made me want to go into being a band director, into being a musician. And I was really big into competitive marching band at that point. I mean, I think most high school students who want to be band directors, especially in the South where most bands are competitive, you kind of fall in love with the competitive marching band aspect. And many of us go into it for that. And then over time, actually, my passion changed from the competitive side of band to really, obviously, the more musical and the more aesthetic side of music and band. But yeah, it all started with movies and video games.
Well, now because of you, I have do 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 in my head, and that'll be there for the next week.
And what's interesting is everybody associates that with Mario, but really they rarely have gone back to that theme, and every game has had its own music.
Right?
So it's been it's interesting how those themes persist. But yeah, I mean those things are infectious, and the music is really high quality. And in fact, I don't know how much you know about various musical cultures, but in Japan, where much of this music comes from, it's highly regarded. It's played in concerts all the time, and even the music of anime shows is much more highly regarded, obviously, than it is in the West. And so they have professional bands and orchestras that put on these concerts all the time, and the crowds eat it up. And frankly, they seem to have a lot less problem filling the concert halls than we do over here. So there's something to learn from that, I suppose.
Not know that. Now I was thinking about the most recent or more recent manifestations of that with Nintendo, like the Wii games, the Wii U, and the Switch now, and the distinctive music that they have for all of those games, like sports, which was hugely popular in the first Wii manifestation. Yeah, they're very distinctive. Obviously, they're infectious.
Yeah.
They get in you, and you think about them. But yeah, so I have to apologize. Hopefully my mic will get this out, but it's time for the daily lawn assault outside. So
Well,
they're out.
it takes consistent effort to keep the campus beautiful, so we'll forgive them for that. But and not to belabor the point, but in those games, I mean, like there's in a lot of those Mario Kart games, for instance, a huge influence of jazz music on those games. And so there are some like really hot charts that come out of some of these things. But even on a Super Nintendo game in my youth, there was the Final Fantasy 6 or 3, as it was called in America. You play through a whole opera scene. Like you play through an aria, you play through recitative, you play through an overture. And so those types of things exposed me to like really great elements of art music, or lowercase c classical music. And it really like it broadened my horizons, even though again it wasn't the most traditional upbringing in the arts. That's what I had. That was the only thing that I really had. I mean, my parents would have taken me to concerts, I suppose, if I wanted to go, but it just wasn't something that was really a huge part of my family's culture. And so yeah, I mean, I'll always be grateful, and I'll always be a proponent of those things, that we shouldn't look past those things. because I think that we have whole generations of musicians being exposed to really high quality music, not only in video games, but also in movies and in television, and, and especially the golden age of long form television that we're in right now. We should absolutely tap into that music and use it to introduce not only our students, but our audiences into just the wide gamut and spectrum of amazing art music that's out there.
Yeah, there's a saying, and I think you can apply this to almost anything that you enjoy as far as taste is concerned. But the one that I heard the most often, if you think about a sommelier and what they do, the refinement of experiencing a wine, you'll often hear some of the best just say the best glass of wine is the one you enjoy.
Sure.
So to your point about, it's a good lesson for students, I think. And we really live in that age where there are fewer distinctions between so-called high and low culture. And that's a good thing, because those influences that I think in the past would have been kind of shuttered over to, well, that's not real music, now can get that spotlight that they deserve.
Well, I think it's important that people realize that some of the most popular, for instance, Mozart operas were considered lowbrow entertainment by audiences of the day. And, you think about all the opera buffa stuff that people always associated for the lower class audiences in the lower class theaters. But now, I mean, people associate all opera with high class art and, high class culture. So it's, I think that I've said this before to friends and had these conversations that a lot of this popular music, particularly orchestral music, it's really, I mean, if movies were in the 1800s, they'd be operas. And so, there's nothing new under the sun. These things just morph and evolve.
Sure.
And I think it's the onus is on conductors to never forget that art is a reflection of life. And if part of life are these other sources of not only entertainment, but art, I mean, then I think that the onus is on us to celebrate those things, and in moderation, obviously, with, a wide palette of musical sources and things that we want to expose our audiences and musicians to.
So you've obviously spent a lot of your life in the South, and judging by your pedigree, you've been at some much larger schools, of course, for your education, which is typical of most of us in academia, right? We go to R1s, and then we kind of the diaspora from there, whether it be a community college, another R1 private school like University of Findlay. So thinking about what you already said about the South and the nature of the competition, and thinking about higher level, R1 competitive bands, how would you situate UF in this mix as a D2 school that maybe doesn't have all the resources as these other institutions? Where's our place, not just on that landscape, but also within the educational experience at UF?
Well, I think that you can have Division I schools, schools that operate in Division I athletics, for instance, and probably, frankly, not have that much more resources than we do. I definitely know and have heard from former mentors that worked at Division I schools that were not quite as economically robust in their band budgets as where I studied with them. And they had to make a lot of sacrifices as well with much bigger bands. And so I think where we have a unique situation to thrive is that we are primed for growth in this band, but we also are growing that growth from a small college perspective. And I think that when students come here, they don't come to Findlay if they want that big Division I experience. I mean, they just don't, right? I mean, you're going to set up for failure if that is your expectation. And so I think part of that subconsciously is, they want that smaller band experience. I mean, even if the band was, let's say, talking years down the road, but let's say the band goes past the maximum size of 72 that the band's ever been. And let's say we even, encroach up to 100. That's still a relatively small band program compared to my alma mater, Mississippi State, which is currently over 400 students, or at least they were before COVID. So you still get that small, close-knit, familial aspect to band. That's honestly just impossible to replicate when you get to a certain size. And by that, I mean the directors knowing every single person in the band, you getting to know, if not everybody in the band as a student, the vast majority of that, the students in the band and your peers. we just had the band over to the house at the end of band camp for a cookout. And I was able to have just about all the students, I think just about all of them showed up. They were able to come over, hang out, have a great time, play with my kids, socialize with each other, suffer my cooking. And they had a great time. And I was telling my wife about it afterwards. If I was at one of the places that I studied, we never could have done those things. And I think that one of the things that really drives me is, and one of the things that I believe is one of my greatest skill sets, is the ability to create a positive culture. And can you create a positive culture and create a positive community in a much bigger band program? Absolutely. But that kind of one-on-one experience is extremely difficult to do in a band of 300, 400. There's only one director that I've ever had in all of my training with all the directors I've ever studied under that has been able to even come close to it. And that's Elva K. Lance, the director of bands at Mississippi State. Just a inspiration to me and many others. But she had like a memory unparalleled to anybody else I've ever met. Every other place I've been, the directors engage with the students and they give them their attention, but it's really hard to remember who just spoke to you when that person's one of 350.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to have the kind of experience with the students where I can have a positive impact on them is really important to me. And something that maybe other people don't realize is that if a student joins band as a freshman, and this is like the high school experience, if a student joins band as a freshman at Findlay and stays in for all 8 semesters, I might be the only faculty member that they have every semester for 8 semesters. And that creates a unique trust that I take extremely seriously, because I've had students come to me about every single issue you can imagine under the sun. I like to tell the story. I'll never forget when a young trumpet player, he came to me and said, at that time, Mr. King, can I talk to you about girls? And I said, clearly, you've come to the wellspring of knowledge about the subject matter. So, they may not have that same experience if they were at a larger school. So I think when it really comes down to, we offer the same thing bigger schools do. Do you want a concert band experience? Great, we've got that. In fact, we've got a wind ensemble experience for you too. We've got a marching band experience, and we're going to be playing in the NCAA at NCAA games. We're going to have jazz band. We're going to have basketball pep band. And if the students want to do other things like chamber music, we absolutely can do those things too. It just allows us to operate in a way that makes memories for these students in a much different way than you make memories at a larger school. I mean, we can't make the same kind of performance memories perhaps because we're not going to be ever playing at the Sugar Bowl. But we can make great performance memories in our own stadium and the kind of interpersonal memories that are much more difficult in a larger band.
You've begun to touch on this a bit, and maybe we could take it a bit further. I think is a good segue. How do you coach someone individually? How do you mentor somebody when you see a flash there, something inspirational, or perhaps the opposite? There's some mistakes. How do you coach that person?
I think that, when you see something, when you see a flash of inspiration or a flash of greatness, I think the first thing you kind of have to do in a way that's appropriate for each person is draw their attention to it. I'm a really big believer in feedback. And, we talk about assessment at the college level, right? Or in any kind of educational setting. And assessment is not, here's a test, here's a quiz. I mean, you're constantly, if you're doing your job, you're constantly assessing in the classroom. And so, part of assessment is also giving feedback. And so if I see a student who has, hey, you played the dog out of that just then, I might give them that feedback in private, or I might more often give that feedback to them in publicly in front of the whole ensemble. But if I see something and I see, for instance, there's a student, I won't say who, but there's a student in the ensemble that's a leader. And when I met the student for the first time, I just saw a flash of something, and I'd say, you would be a really great leader in this particular position in the marching band as we go forward. And this was, during COVID when I first came in, and this person has now been a leader in the marching band for 2 years and is doing a great job. Um, I've been a band director going in my 14th year now, and you just develop an intuition. You also develop an intuition of maybe that there's some fertile ground there and they haven't quite had that flash, but if you give them the right kind of opportunity to grow and opportunity sometimes to grow publicly, you can kind of nurture their growth and kind of, kickstart their growth for them. But I think that, for what my students really enjoy in our relationship is that they just have the regularity. They have the regularity. They know they can come by, they can talk to me, that I'm going to, give them consistent feedback. And that I also listen to them. I listen to them and I say, what do you want to get out of this program? What has gone well in the past? What has not gone well in the past? And what can we do to make this year better? And so I think by having a culture of mutual respect, a culture where I tell them it's okay to make a mistake. I mean, mistakes are proof that you're trying. Mistakes are proof that you're giving effort. And as long as you're willing to give effort and your best effort, you're never going to be, in trouble with me. So I think by creating a safe culture that they can take risks, they can take chances, they can take opportunity, like, yep, that solo didn't go well in jazz band. Let's try that one again. Here's a couple things to maybe do this time that's better. They are willing to, let their guard down. We have a saying in the band. It's a motto that she may not have been the one to originate it, but Joanne Falletta, the conductor, at least at that time, of the Buffalo Philharmonic, very, very fine conducting teacher, and one of the few, like real true pioneers of women conductors in the professional orchestral world. I worked with her for a few days at a workshop that I went to at Juilliard a number of years ago. And she gave us the quote, embrace the awkward. And that's been part of my teaching philosophy ever since. And so by allowing students to understand, embrace the awkward, they create those moments, they let their guard down, and then those moments happen. So I think it's just a matter, again, of being aware of it, or being aware that you could create some of those moments, and then just, positive feedback and consistent feedback. That's one of the greatest gifts of teaching some of these students for 8 semesters in a row.
Tell us about the process of selection for your programs, all of them. Give me a couple examples.
Okay, well, for the marching band, I'll start with that one. So when we're picking a show, this year probably will be the year I start this, but in other institutions, I've either been a part of or started student selection committees. And so the students will come together and pick one of the halftime shows under my guidance. But let's talk about this fall. Themes are a kind of a common tool that a lot of directors and conductors use when selecting repertoire. So one of the things that I thought a lot about for this fall, with marching band not having been a thing at most colleges in the previous year, was some semblance of marching band coming back, marching band being back. And I had a number of ideas. The first piece that we're playing in our first halftime show is Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, a very not well-known song to most people, but those of us really in the music world know the song. So I originally had thought, okay, well, what are some ideas that we could do? And I told the students this recently, that I had this show in my mind, like maybe we'll do a classic rock show and we'll call it Boomers Okay, as a play on OK Boomers, and play a bunch of baby boomer music. But I thought about it more, and I was thinking, well, marching band is back. Like, that's kind of an interesting thought. And what does that look like? And that can take a lot of different manifestations of that idea. So what it turned into was, well, why don't we, instead of doing one theme, let's just do all of them. So we're kind of doing an eclectic mix of music in which there are common theme shows that marching bands do, like a classic rock show. Okay, well, let's do Immigrant Song. Let's do a Latin show. That's really common for marching bands. So we're doing a pop Latin tune, Fireball by the artist Pitbull. Well, another show that the marching bands commonly do at high school and college is Music of Broadway. So we're doing Jet Song from West Side Story. And then we're ending with a pop tune and a combination tune that satisfies, a pop music show and a movie music show and that's I'm Still Standing by Elton John. And that was, as I started thinking about Marching Band is Back, that was one that was in my head right away. And what a way to end the show thematically, that no matter what's happened, Marching Band is back, and you know what, we're still standing, we're still marching, we're still playing. So other theme shows come and go, and we think about what's appropriate for their skill level, what's going to make them successful, what's appropriate for our audience. There are certain types of music that maybe aren't going to go over that well in Findlay, Ohio yet. And, that even could be like a full out classical show. The audience maybe isn't ready for, the music of John Cage on the field at halftime and things like that. So, but for concert band and for jazz band to an extent, but for concert band, regardless of the ensemble, I have to understand as the conductor and as a teacher that the selection of music that I pick is more than just the music they're going to play. It's the curriculum for the semester. Like, what I want my students to learn is directly impacted by the music I select. And so there will be pieces that I select because I'm really excited about a certain composer. And I think that you need to be exposed to this composer. You may hate the piece, but you need to be exposed to the composer and their soundscape and their language, their harmonic language, so that you can grow in your, artistic, aesthetic appreciation. I might pick a march because, hey, you know what? I don't see a lot of high school bands really playing marches as much anymore as when I was a student. And marches, in my opinion, teach you a lot of really valuable skills in a single package that other types of pieces maybe don't. I might pick a piece based on a theme, and I might pick pieces that I think will resonate with students thematically or because of something the composer does. I'll give you an example. I did this with the symphonic band last year. I've done it with other groups. There's a piece by Stephen Bryant, who is a fantastic composer. He's actually from Arkansas. His father was a band director, and I had the pleasure of working with him at the University of Memphis. He was one of our composers in residence. Wonderful, wonderful composer and musician. And he wrote a piece that's called The Machine Awakes. And he wrote this back earlier in the early 2000s. And it's about a machine that becomes self-aware. And throughout the course of the work, the band is playing with an electronic track. And so this electronic track starts off mimicking the sounds of clarinets and mimicking the sounds with pre-recorded sounds of clarinets and brass. And eventually it morphs into pure electronica music. And so you have this idea of it starting to wake up, mimic what's around it, and then become self-aware and become its own thing. And then the piece ends in explosions. So I'll let you, determine your own story for that. But what a prescient, thematic piece that he wrote before shows like Black Mirror became popular. And, you had former candidate for president, Andrew Yang, talking about the dangers of automation and the dangers, the implications that those things may have on our economy. And here you have a musician kind of forecasting the future, thinking about those things, maybe purposefully, maybe accidentally. But I thought that not only would it be thematically interesting to ponder for the students and the musicians, but also when you play with an electronic track, you have to stay with it. You hit play on the track, and there is a functional skill there that we have to stay at one tempo the entire time and balance to this electronic music. So there are all kinds of considerations, but I think for me, what's most important is I never lose sight that what we play is our curriculum. And I am absolutely beholden to my students' education to make sure that I pick not just fun music, but music with a purpose, music that I believe in and I want them to believe in.
Are you familiar with the genre vaporwave, vapor music?
No, I'm not.
I'll send you some links on it because it,
Okay.
it touches on what you're talking about there about, kind of sentient machine music. Yeah, it's like overdub, oversampling of 80s pop hits.
Interesting.
Mixed to like chill wave. It's very different, but it is kind of an AI format.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, all this kinds of ideas have been around for a long time. If you go back and look at the music of Terry Riley and Steve Reich and Paul Blonsky and the sampling techniques that were created, It's just an outgrowth of those things. But I really, and Stephen Bryant's done bigger and much more high end works with these ideas, like ecstatic waters. But I think some of these conversations that we should be having with our young people, because of the fields they're going into and how automation, for instance, may have implications into some of their careers. Uh, if the only time they even ponder that might be playing a piece of music in band, then at the very least they need to ponder those things.
So you took over for someone who had been here 40 years. That's quite a long legacy there. And you also mentioned previously in the interview that you could be the department of one. You might be the only person that these students have contact with. Just for reference for the audience, we only have one other person in our music department that handles more of the choral side of things, and that's Dr. Sewa Jung. But I guess my question here is, you take over a legacy like that, good and bad, right? The good part is it's brand new now. It is your turn to do what you want, and really you have almost infinite authority to do that, autonomous ability to create and shape. But the bad part is there's expectations in small communities. It's what they're used to and tradition and all of that stuff. So maybe you could talk to me about the process of taking over, but also what gets you excited about your direction that you'd like to take the program in.
Sure. Well, the great news is that, if this wasn't, when somebody's in an institution for 40 years, uh, the institution has a way of weeding out people who don't need to be there, right? And who probably shouldn't be there for 40 years. So a lot of the times, hopefully, if you take over for somebody who's been there that long, it's because they've done a great job. And that was definitely the case where I took over. There was a solid foundation. And I'm very grateful, and the friendship I've created with Jack Taylor has really helped with that transition. In fact, my kids absolutely love seeing him and his wife, and they, have a lot of fun with them. And so, I'm very blessed. I know people who've taken over for other long-term conductors, and the transition has not gone nearly as well. So I think that, because I've had teachers, for instance, Elva K. Lance, who's been at Mississippi State for a long time and has created amazing growth for that band program. And my high school band director, who was in places for a long time until he retired, I've been around those types of programs. And so, I try to always put myself in the perspective of somebody else. And I think, well, a student who has worked with this director and now that person's gone, not to mention COVID-19 and a lot of uncertainty, what are the most important things? So, for me, it was, what can I do to bring stability to a program in transition, and not only in transition for director changes, which can cause problems and attrition, but, then we had this global pandemic that I was coming into. And so I think that there are a lot of different ways to go about it, but here's how I went about it. I met with a lot of students. And said, well, what is important to you? What are the things that you really feel strongly that are part of this program's identity that you want to continue forward? And what are the things that you think students are open to change about, and open to change, or maybe even wanting change? Because not only did I take over for somebody who was here for 40 years, but I also took over, for an adjunct that was running the athletic band for a number of years as well. And so approaching both of those in different ways, but coming at it from a lot of soliciting a lot of student feedback. And, I don't think there's anything that I necessarily do that's wildly different. I think it really comes down to, I have a different personality. Now, Jack and I aren't, diametrically opposed at all. But, I'm obviously not him, and he's obviously not me. So I think for me, as somebody who grew up in, with a father with a military career and who's been around in a lot of different places and a lot of different traditions, it was really important for me to, again, understand what are the things that are important, what are the things that maybe at least in the near future need to stay the same, and what are some things that can change that maybe students wanted to change. And so I think by engaging respectfully with the musicians that are here and not just imposing my will, I think that help smooth a lot of the transition. And I really believe in student ownership. I believe in student leadership. So by giving the students a voice in that, I hope that they found that I legitimately wanted to respect them and respect their feelings. So, I mean, maybe there's been more change in the marching band, obviously, with the expansion of into a full marching band with woodwind players, and now, color guard and twirlers, which had already started. But in the concert band side of things and in the jazz band side of things, which were directly under, Jack's purview for the last part of his career, I would say that I think that nothing fundamentally has changed for those students other than the personality of the person on the podium. We're still going to play the same number of concerts. We're still going to rehearse when we rehearse. We've kept the infrastructure in place. And, I hope that the students, they're coming back. So they seem to not mind the personality difference so much, which I guess is a good thing. But with the marching band, there were things that had to change for the sake of offering a more inclusive experience for our students. I think I've told the students, I met my wife in college marching band. She and I were both clarinet players. I hate to think that there are students at the school that are not in marching band because they either A, didn't feel welcome, or B, did not want to change instruments. I don't know that I would have. I don't know that I would have. And I majored in music, but I wanted to play the thing I wanted to play. And so not only to grow the program, but I think to grow the not just the numbers, but the kind of people that we have in the band. I think it was super important. And the students have been really receptive to a lot of the changes, I'd say just about all the changes in the marching band, mostly because I've been transparent. And if we've changed something, it's never been because I don't like this. It's because there's a purpose behind it. There's a greater meaning behind it to get us to the next level. And the student leadership has been a part of those decisions just about every step of the way.
We're at a beginning here, not just a beginning of a semester, which is literally for the audience's sake, this is the first day of a new semester. But really, to some of the other allusions we've made in this interview, is it's new in the sense that we're coming back and we're sort of post-pandemic, but we're sort of not post-pandemic. Right. And work and school and all these functions, we haven't really sorted out what they mean in this new, brave new world, if you will. What do you say to students at the beginning of this journey?
Well, to the beginning of the journey, especially just in general of their college career, I say it's going to be the best time of your life so far. I mean, hopefully it was for me. My father passed away when I was a freshman in college in the spring semester. And so I tell students, up until that point, college was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely, I don't want to say carefree, because, you obviously had classes and assignments and things like that, but you were able to kind of exhibit your adulthood in a responsible way, or I guess in a way that you chose to do it. I mostly chose responsible, but you get to experience adulthood and freedom while pursuing, hopefully, the thing that you really want to do with your life. And so friendships that I've made as a freshman in college still persist to this day. Some of those friends are doctors, and some of those friends are scientists, and some of those friends are band directors. And, so I try to tell students that, the things they loved about their band experience in high school are still going to be there. It's just going to be missing a lot of the tedious things, in my opinion. No offense to my colleagues, but, it's just the nature of the difference between college and high school band. And so, I try to tell students, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to, I just gave a speech to the marching band on one of our last rehearsals about how to be successful as a college student based on my experience as a college teacher. And I said, you've got to live your college experience. You cannot, no offense to the parents, they may get mad at me for saying this, but it's their college experience. It's not their mother's, it's not their father's, it's not their grandma's or whoever's. It's their college experience. They have to be the one to decide, can I do this extra activity without ruining my grades? Can I go to Walmart at 3 a.m.? I mean, maybe you shouldn't, but, can I go out and go to George House, and close the building down with my friends and solve all the world's problems? Can I work and balance life? So, I mean, for me, I think that this is a moment of great excitement in these students' lives. And you know, as a person of faith, I mean, I also pray for my students. You know, I pray for them at mass. I pray for them in my regular prayers, and I think about them, and I pray not only that they are safe, but I pray for their success. I pray for the success of our program, and just for the success of them individually. And I think that, you know, as long as the faculty are doing what we can do and the staff are doing what we can do to give them that great experience, or give them the infrastructure around that great experience, then I mean, yeah, it should be the start of something really special.
So you're walking down a hall. Let's say it's at Egner.
Those are long hallways there.
It's a long hallway, right? And you hear some students talking about you. Maybe there's some faculty there too, and they're saying some things about you, and they're good things. What are they saying?
Probably that I have the best memes on campus from any of their teachers. I really believe in the value of humor and the use of humor in the classroom. And so I think that, you know, for a lot of the students, I hope that they would say that I really do care about them. I mean, I genuinely, I don't say that in a trite way. I mean, I genuinely care about who they are as individuals and their future success. And like I said, I don't say it willy-nilly. I mean, I literally pray for my students. I want them to succeed, and I want them to succeed through the, you know, not just in their majors, but, you know, we talk about the love and the aesthetic of music a lot, but there are inarguably a lot of utilitarian things they learn about life through music and through their band ensembles. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We talk about tenacity, persevering, and committing to excellence. And I'll frequently, they get tired of me saying this, but I'll say, you know, when I want you to go after this and get this rhythm right, or get this note right, I'm not just trying to get you to get a rhythm or note right. I'm saying that when you're a pharmacist one day and you're at the end of your shift and you are just dog tired, I hope you get that prescription right. That when you're a social worker one day and you are just up to your eyeballs in some of the most tragic stories that you're ever going to hear, that I hope that you commit to excellence and continue to give your all to that next person who walks into your office, who needs somebody. So I constantly try to get them to see the bigger picture, but I also try to make them laugh a lot. And we constantly are, you know, sharing band memes and things like that in the app that we use to communicate and keep everybody, you know, organized and informed. And in fact, in a video where we had to teach a very complicated drill move, it didn't go well the first time on the field. So I made a video for them to watch overnight before the next rehearsal during band camp. And, you know, I kind of started it out humorously, like it was some YouTube content creator gamer channel, and just, you know, poked a little bit of fun at myself in the process. And I know that they kind of thought it was, you know, pretty funny and, you know, purposefully cringeworthy. And if that's what it takes, you know, for them to like then watch the rest of the video, I'm perfectly fine with that, because there are a lot of people in my field, and I say this with all respect to them, who take themselves a little too seriously, who take our field a little too seriously. Now, we should take our craft seriously. We should take our art seriously, you know, but in the teaching of it, in the advocacy of it, in the everyday struggle of it, we don't need to lose sight of the fact that these are young people who, you know, they joined band for a reason way back in the day, and that reason was because music seemed fun. So I never want my students, my musicians, to lose sight of the fact that what we do, while it's hard work and while I'm asking you to be vulnerable at times and give of yourself, it should also be fun. And I hope, it is my firm hope, that when a student leaves my rehearsal, they leave that rehearsal feeling better about their day, feeling better about themselves. And I've had that cathartic, therapeutic experience as their conductor and as conductors of other ensembles numerous times, where I came in ready to be PO'd off at the world and left, you know, like I couldn't even remember what I was mad about.
Mm.
that's my hope for them, and that's what I hope that they say that what their band experience is like. And the fact they keep bringing students in these first few days of school to try to get them to join marching band before the cutoff period for joining class, I hope is testament to that.
Nice. Keep going down that same hall. There's some people that are saying some not so nice things about you. What are they saying?
He's just too handsome. He sings too beautifully. He really, makes us feel inadequate in every way possible. I think that when you use humor as a tool, you have to be careful with it because, an offhand comment, which was meant to be flippant or funny or, ironic, can always be misinterpreted by someone. I think that sometimes people can grumble if they come from programs where maybe the expectation wasn't as high. I never try to make my expectations beyond the reasonable limit of what I think they can achieve, although they often frequently overachieve the expectations I set for them. But I think that for some students, the rigor that I demand out of my students is maybe more than what they're used to. And frankly, maybe more than what they're used to in some of their other classes and their majors. But I say boohoo about that. Again, I don't want mediocre pharmacists or vets or doctors or nurses or teachers. So if the greater lesson is you gotta step up to the plate a little bit more, then by God, I hope you take that lesson with you into your career.
It's interesting. The part about humor resonates with me. My father, who was definitely a very big role model in my life, has a very dry sense of humor. Lots of references. He's very smart, very witty, but his delivery is so deadpan that most people miss it. And, it wasn't until I was much older, maybe 18, 19, and I said to him, I'm like, Dad, humor is a bit like beauty. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. And he had never really thought about that before. He proceeded from this notion that what's funny is funny.
Right.
And, it's good that you are present enough to recognize that in yourself, that, sometimes it doesn't always play as well in certain contexts. That's difficult, particularly if you generally, like you said, you don't take yourself serious. You take what you do seriously, but not yourself seriously. And sometimes those messages can be conflated.
I'm a lifelong fan of stand-up comedy. I've watched a lot of stand-up comedy over the years. And people will say, if it's funny, it's funny. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that. But I also have had many comments and jokes go sideways because either I didn't read the room correctly or it was just misinterpreted, or sometimes I make those jokes really quick and really fast paced. And I don't always put, I don't set it up for the delivery. It's just a quip. And so, yeah, I've learned over the years that, you have to be, what can be a funny quip to one person can, end up on a course evaluation about how dare you say, that this thing is, the Avengers are better than the Justice League or something, And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the danger of it. But honestly, I think that, if a student wants to be offended by something, or anybody wants to be offended by something, they're going to be offended by it. I think the key to it is when we take a step back and say, what was the intent behind this person's words? Right. Was the intent to offend, or was the intent, to, make somebody laugh? And I mean, we've all said things that we've stepped in and stuck back and said, ooh, that did not go how I intended for that to go. And I think that students would also say that I'm really willing to have grace with them. I mean, that goes back to my faith. I mean, forgiveness is such a huge part of not only my faith, but I mean, culturally speaking, it should still be a huge part. I have a very hard line against so-called cancel culture. I think that cancel culture, I think to hold people accountable for things that they do is important for sure. But I think that cancel culture, and the danger of it is, it's like religion without forgiveness. If there's no way back for somebody when they mess up, or for something they said 20 years ago, which, to judge somebody what they did early in life or said, and to have no capacity for growth and change in a person, to have no forgiveness is really, really dangerous for our society. And so for me, if I want to have forgiveness in the society, then I have to have forgiveness in my teaching when a student messes up. And I read a quote recently that said, a band director in our professional Facebook group said it. They were talking about a situation with a student, a drum major, in fact, who couldn't be at band camp or part of band camp because they came in really late. They were hired, and the date for band camp wasn't announced. And that person, families
Mhm.
made plans. And another band director chimed in and said, when choosing between the right thing to do and the kind thing to do, start with the kind.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean to devolve into moral relativism, at least for me, but it does mean that can I start with kindness and then work that person towards the right thing to do through kindness? So I would hope that students would feel that I would, choose the kind thing to do 9.9 times out of 10.
Context is everything. This is a conversation for another time, but I do see what you're talking about with kind of and I would say an evangelical strain to it of rightness. And I hope that doesn't offend anybody listening to this. I'm not calling out evangelicals as a group, but the expression, the
The
definition of
the,
the
the
term.
over the over wokeness. I think that there's good in being aware of other people's lived experiences and things, but there is a zealousness to some of these strains of thought that are religious. I mean, there are testimonies that they make, and there are credos that they
Yeah.
believe,
The
and
certitude is
certitude.
what's is interesting to me. I liken it to kind of a new McCarthyism.
Very much so,
Yeah.
very much so, and it's very. I mean, I've said this before. I'm glad I'm married. I'm glad I'm married to somebody for going on 10 years this fall, and we've been together for 15, because I would be terrified as a young person to date. I would, and that's not to say that I'm downplaying the experiences that people have had, negative experiences. Obviously, I want to believe them when they say that things have had happened to them, but it's just terrifying to know that a tweet or a text could be taken out of context. And so one of the things, again, I pray for our students is that they walk a good path, and they are made aware of what life is really like, and how the things they say and can do will be held and used against them in the court of public opinion. So I think it's really important that we have those conversations with our students to make them better people, but also prepare them for the way the world is right now.
Well, and modeling empathy goes a long way to that. And it
That's
sounds like that's very much your ethos. So give me your elevator speech. You have 30 seconds with a family or a student. What do you tell me?
to join the band program specifically.
Yeah, well, whatever you want it to be, to be an Oiler.
I think that, if you are looking for a college experience that is going to be tailored to who you are, and you don't want to be a number, you want to actually have teachers and directors who know who you are, so you can be Jeff and not clarinet number 46 and the Division I band you're also looking at. Then you come and take a look at us. If you want to be really career focused and come out of here with the skills necessary to succeed, but also develop the soft skills that employers are looking for, come and take a look at us. And if you want to have all the experiences, the opportunities that you would have at the bigger school, like marching band, concert band, jazz band, basketball, pep band, all of those things, but you want to have it in that kind of more intimate setting where you really truly are a person and can affect change and can affect tradition, then you really should come and take a look at us, because we are always looking for more people to join our ensembles, but more importantly, our band family.
Okay, you got me, Dr. King. I'm signing up.
All right. Well, we need a bassoonist right now, so we can get you started on lessons this afternoon, in fact.
So thank you. I haven't had an opportunity to kind of publicly shame you on this, but I know I've privately said it to you a couple times. I'm very grateful for you coming in when you came in, not just this enormous transition for us as a program, but during COVID, and to do it with such grace and poise and presence for our students it cannot be undersold. So I'm very grateful for that, Wes. Thank you.
Well, and I say this, thank you, Dr. Tulley. I say this, and not just because I'm talking to my dean, but I mean, honestly, the trust that the administration, top to bottom, has had in me, and the trust to, have the expertise for my field, is crucial. And I can easily say that this has probably been the most supportive administration that I've worked for ever since my first job as a middle school, high school band director. And so, the things that are creating success right now, and I have emails from students in my inbox about joining marching band. Oh, and there's a phone call right there. So to have those things happen, that happens because of the bedrock of trust from y'all. So I really do appreciate that, like, deeply.
Thank you. If you have more questions for Dr. King and you'd like to follow up, his best address would be wes.king@finley.edu. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please follow up if you have any questions about band, courses, music lessons, anything at all. Please follow up with him there. And if you like what you see here, I encourage you to like us and follow us on UFTV, our YouTube channel. Easiest way to find us is simply just to type in UFTV. And I would encourage you to subscribe to the Ask the Professor series, but all of our programming on UFTV, which is also housed, incidentally, in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.